Until all county.
Oh. Can you hear us now? Great, sorry. I think we might have been muted there.
Oh, okay.
We have to start again.
I think we're okay.
All right. So I'll do it again. Approval of the September 17th minutes. Do I have any corrections on there? Additions or subtractions? If not, may I have a motion to approve? May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of accepting and approving the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
Who made the motion?
I did.
Any opposed? Okay, carried. Right, open to the public. We don't even have the dogs tonight. Okay. Then I am closing it to the public, and we have the executive director's report.
All righty. First off, some sad news. We are saying goodbye to our economic and workforce development planner, Greg Pelker. He's stepping away from planning, and his last day is Friday. So please help us give Greg a big thank you for all that he's done in a short time with RPC. He's had a very lasting impact and helped restart some critical program areas. So Greg, thank you.
Great to be able to work with everyone. I will be hopefully stay in touch with everyone.
That'd be great. Please do. With losing a planner, we have gained a planner. So as at the time of writing this, we were still interviewing. Since then, we have offered the position and it has been accepted. So we'll have a new senior planner joining us in mid-November. Her name is Karina Edwards. She's from Florida and will be relocating to Vermont. Has a ton of experience working all over the country in planning, and will be a really nice fit, I think, for the RPC team. So please help us give her a warm welcome when she comes on. We'll be sure to let you all know when that is exactly and share that information with you. So we expect she'll be taking over a lot of Greg's duties and then maybe a few others. So stay tuned for more of that. No surprise, it is full audit season. MK and Karen have been working super diligently over the last several weeks to get prepared. We have to have everything submitted by the end of this month. With that, because we're doing our audits a little later, the audit approval needs to happen at our December meeting, similar to last year. So the only action we need to take in December will be on our audit, and then we'll have our holiday party. So that'll be in person online, folks. So please consider coming down to Rutland for our holiday party. That is December 8th. We're moving that up to try to avoid any holiday conflicts. So December 9th, I said 8th, December 9th, sorry, right there written on the page. I should read that. Will be when we vote on the audit and have that party. Membership dues memos went out couple Fridays ago. I CC'd all of the commissioners on those emails, so hopefully you have all received those and heard if there are potential issues with your towns. Thank you all for having conversations with your select boards. So far, we have not heard any super negative feedback, so we're confident that this change will be accepted with the town select board. So thank you for your support on all of that. Exciting news, 2 grants for neighborhood development areas in our region. So right now, the only designated neighborhood area is in Rutland City. That has huge implications over Act 250 and housing development. So the 2 areas we're going to be looking to develop are in Brandon and Fairhaven, and Logan will be doing that work with those towns. So some exciting news there, and that could potentially get them to tier 1A status in Act 250. Lyle's online. I'm going to give him a shout out here. We are working with Cedar to solicit projects for the regional project priority list. Every year, the regional development corporations advance 10 priority projects to the state of Vermont that really highlight the sort of project needs within our region. So those applications are being accepted through November 15th. We're trying to solicit more directly from municipalities. If you have questions on the program or interested in submitting an application, please reach out to Cooper Babbitt. He is the operations manager at Cedar. And Lyle, you want to add anything to that? Well, he's working on a meeting. This was in our newsletter, so if you're interested in learning a little bit more, you can find it there.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry. The purpose for this, quite frankly, is that you can gain points by being on the list. And right now we are focusing on housing, of course, that's a big deal, and commercial property development. So if you have commercial property development and or housing projects in your communities, we would love to hear from you. The application is not daunting in any way. You probably or developers already have everything they need to fill that out. If they spent 25 minutes on it, it would be 10 minutes too long. So I would encourage people to submit any projects that they have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lyle. Lastly, is just an awareness about the Recreation Trails Program and VORAC community grant programs. A lot of you have reached out asking about recreation funding. This is that chance. There's 2 different funding pots. We've sent out notices about this funding opportunity. So check your email on some of that information. Both program websites are live, and there have been webinars on both these programs. So that's more of an FYI. The last bit is a checkup on our move. So, be smaller. Thank you. Okay. So as you all remember, you approved a allotment of $25,000 to fund the move and office upgrade to this new space. So we wanted to circle back with you and let you know that we came quite a bit under budget, luckily. So the Todd Transportation, this top line was $2,700 under, and then our landlord's upfit was $5,200 under, so close to 8,000 under on our miscellaneous budget for furniture, equipment, GMP hookup fees, everything you can name it, came in a little over budget at 6,800. So overall, we're still under budget by 7,100. So why I am telling you this is we have a few expenses that we'd like to cover with this under budget amount to upfit our medium conference room. A couple of the pieces of furniture could not survive the move over, such as our bookcases. So we'd like to take half this amount, 3,500, to upfit our medium conference room, and then whatever the remainder is to go back to our fund balance to replenish some of the original amount. So if there is interest in supporting that, we just need a motion because the original motion was tied to these specific funding amounts.
What are you gonna do?
We are putting up bookshelves because you've probably seen all the boxes in there. Our library is currently boxed on the floor because we don't have any shelves. And then a new conference table because the current one doesn't exactly fit in that space. We don't know. That is also Lyle's table. Lyle, you're getting your table back, hopefully. Thank you for letting us borrow it. So yeah,
You're
those are
entirely welcome. I don't have anywhere to put it.
in Bronson, originally, I had this bright idea that I would be building out the shelving. It hasn't happened yet. It's not going to happen, so it'd be much easier to get this pre-made.
It's a trip down to IKEA.
Yeah.
Any discussion?
There anything else that you see you're gonna need that's missing here that you wanna include, or you think
Nope,
that's gonna be the final?
This is it. Yeah, we've taken the time up until now just to make sure there's everything that's out there is accounted for properly coded. So we're confident this is everything we need.
Great.
Any more discussion? Any discussion online? Any questions? Then can we have a motion to allow a couple of bookcases to be made
And a table.
and a table?
What was the amount that you need?
3,500.
I'll make a motion to approve the reallocation of $3,500 from the blue fund to bookshelves and table for the conference.
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you all very much for the support. It's gotten a lot of good use lately from the regional planning committee.
that happens.
Speaking of regional plan update. Yeah, regional plan report. Thank you. For some reason, I thought it was out of order. Okay. So our task 2 Rev 2 is complete and the regional plan committee has completed reviewing all draft chapters. I got to give a very special thank you to that committee. They have spent 15 hours here and probably triple that reviewing these chapter drafts. So a huge amount of effort, a lot of input. So we really, really appreciate it. Thank you to the team. On engagement side, hopefully you all have been receiving emails, newsletters, Facebook posts, front porch forums, all that stuff, because we've been really trying to hit the marketing as hard as we can. The staff has presented to all 27 select boards. We've held several pop-up events again in the region, including some this weekend. And we hosted our first public feedback session. It wasn't a great turnout. However, those that did come really offered a lot of substantive feedback. That being said, we want a good turnout. So October 30th is our second and last feedback session. You all are getting the abbreviated version of that tonight. But if you could help spread the word, we're going to continue to try to get the word out there. Planning commission members, select board members, folks in town government, or just general public, it'd be great to have them be able to weigh in a much more intimate setting than an online survey. That being said, we do have an online survey. And as of today, this number was 200 responses. So we're not getting that same level of response rate from our first survey. We never expected to. That one was really broad and more fun. This one's pretty meaty, and I'm guessing a lot of folks don't love reading 200 policies in a row. So the 200 we have gotten have been great, but we'd love to get more. If you could help push this out, that'd be awesome. There was a comment.
I was asking what's the relativity to the two?
Yeah, so the entire regional population is 60,000 men, women, and child. So, of the original 1,200, that was about 1.6% of the county. A lot less with 200. So, right now we're really looking for quality over quantity in that feedback, but the more the better. So, great question, Heather.
What's the time and location for this feedback?
Yep, so it's October 30th, 6 o'clock here. It is on the regional plan website, and we have been sending out reminder emails. We'll be sending out a blast tomorrow. Our regional plan website can be found on our normal website or rutlandrpc.org /plan 2026. Right? Now that you're in my brain. Yeah. One of the slashes 2026. So all the information is up there, including the link to this meeting if you want to attend virtually. But again, I will send this out to the entire commission again in an email blast tomorrow. So hopefully it isn't the first one you've gotten. I think I've sent 3 or 4 of these. Apologies if I'm overburdening you. So any questions about where we're at? Yeah.
Are you about ready to give us a copy to see where you are? Have a look at this draft?
So we've talked about this, Bronson, and you will get the first full draft after the planners have had a chance to incorporate the regional plan committee's feedback and the feedback from this phase 2 approach. So you will get that in spring of 2025. When we have a full next draft.
I don't think that's acceptable, but
Well, this
I
is
don't know what's going
the
on.
process that has been laid out since October of 2023 by the board.
is there a problem with making a copy of where you are now so we can see it?
Horse out of the barn though, it's too early. We're not
No, it's
even.
not. I don't ever remember at a meeting giving any direction to you guys. I don't ever remember having told you how we wanted this put together.
That's tonight. We're gonna be going over the policies.
Well, that's. Yeah.
Okay. Well, just let you know there's a process we're following it. All right, shall we move on to tonight's main event then, which is the draft policy feedback session. So I sent this all out to you, this presentation. I hope you have had a chance to review it, because we're not going to give you the full feedback tonight because it took us 2.5 hours with 3 people attending. So we might be here all night if we do it this way. That being said, if there's things not covered tonight that you feel you want to include, we still have the survey, we still have the email address. There's plenty of other opportunities. However, this is a great chance while we're all here with the planners themselves to offer that feedback. So we're going to switch gears and look at does this all look familiar to everyone? Awesome. So this was sent out with our board packet. This is the exact same presentation we're using for the feedback sessions. It's laying out what the goals are, which again, tonight, seeking your thoughts on the plan draft policies. We also want to share, or we want to get feedback on what we heard for the key takeaways. But tonight, we're really going to focus just on those draft plan policies. So again, we are in the second phase of our engagement. There's still one more engagement phase to go. But with that, let's just kick it right off with land use. So Logan, our land use planner, is going to give a little bit of background on his goals and his draft policies.
Yeah, thank you, Devin. So the land use chapter has a goal of maintaining historic settlement patterns of a compact village or urban center separated by rural countrysides. The first policy is focusing on where we want to grow. It's talking about increasing infill development, redevelopment, and adaptive reuse of underutilized properties within planned growth areas, village areas, transition infill areas, and enterprise areas. Understandable question would be, what are these areas? When you're looking at the policies with these capitalized letters, we're speaking to the future land use map. One thing to also be aware of is state law has standardized these districts, which is something new with this regional plan. The second policy is talking about where we want to avoid development and talking about stopping strip development and development on land that contains significant natural and agricultural resources, areas of high flood risk, comprise resource industries, and provide for outdoor recreation and other values. And those specific aspects, high areas of high flood risk, those sort of pieces are spelled out more in the other chapters. So the land use chapter, in a lot of ways, is at the nexus of a lot of the other chapters in the regional plan. The third policy is talking about development outside planned growth areas and village areas. So this is an acknowledgement that there will be some development outside our village centers and our downtowns. And when that occurs, that it should be clustered or otherwise designed to protect ecologically sensitive areas and farmland and agricultural soils and those sorts of ecological functions more broadly. The fourth policy is talking about public investments as it relates to the future land use map and existing development. And it's saying most public investments are in those planned growth areas or village areas, which are, the downtowns and village centers, or those areas that already have, existing clusters of buildings. So that one was talking about public investment. And the fifth policy is talking about the characteristics of the development as it relates to its surroundings. So it's talking about ensuring that the scale, siting, design, and management of new development is orderly by respecting the character of the natural and built environment. So this is kind of an acknowledgement that there are different aspects of different parts of the region, and we want development to be compatible with those sorts of aspects of the region. And this is all parsed out with the future land use map. I'll take any questions.
Or thoughts? What's missing? What do you like?
I will tell you one thing, and that is that in spite of how many times they say it in the statute, the way we were developed, as soon as we had subdued the savages, we did not live in little clusters. Nobody wants to. And the idea that you're trying to force us to do that so you can have wide open forests so that somebody might want to walk through.
Yeah, I appreciate that input. And I think that's sort of a perspective, that I've certainly heard. I think, one thing we did also hear in that phase one engagement was, a focus on, our growth in our village centers and downtowns, but also that, our natural resources and our open space and that rural environment was also one of the things, that was really valued in the region. But I definitely hear you on that.
Yeah, they value it because they don't own it. They don't pay the taxes on it. Somebody else owns it.
Yeah.
I got something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So from my town, we've never, the town has been around for 200 and some odd years. There was a town center at one point, but our development over the last 30 years has been the complete opposite of what you're trying to do. To echo what that gentleman was saying, when people develop properties in our town, they specifically want to have like a castle and 30 or 100 acres, or they don't want clustered. They don't want to live in what you're, proposing.
Right.
And that really echoes a lot through, the years of just watching our development. Like, there is a certain amount of clustered housing where we are around the lakes because it's just out of necessity. But in general, like people don't want that.
Hmm.
Or at least that's what we have found in our community.
Yeah, and I think that's a, I think it's a good thing to think about, thinking about market demand, and, where people actually want and, thinking about future supply as that relates. I think that's a really great point. Any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, my thought is if the state wants to build 30,000 units of affordable housing, this doesn't accommodate that.
Yeah, and
Where would
I
you,
mean, I don't think any community in Rutland can fit 200, 300, 400 houses into their community, into this sort of structure.
Could have stayed in New York, if that's what we wanted.
is there an alternative?
My neighbor?
I don't know what the alternative is, but, it just gets very expensive when you start building within confined areas. I mean, if you look at somewhere like Portland, Oregon, where they put the boundaries in there of where
Right.
you couldn't build beyond, nobody could afford to build within the boundaries anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to happen in Vermont, where you just can't afford to build affordable housing because nowhere allows it.
Yeah, and another, this concept of a village center. Now, I lived in Killington for a couple of decades, now I'm in Rutland Town. And could somebody please tell me where the village center is in each of those places?
Yeah, and I think, and I think this is a challenge with this chapter, is that we're not looking at a future land use map right now. And I think that might be a piece that answers a lot of these questions. And unfortunately, through the rulemaking process and how the state has mandated us to follow this, these sort of parameters, we don't have the exact methodology yet for me to be able to provide that map. And I think, some of these answers of exactly what that village center is in different communities under different contexts, I think that'd be parsed out more. And I apologize, we don't have that available, and that's unfortunately the flaws of the state setting up this methodology. So I definitely hear that, trying to conceptualize exactly what this, what exactly is a village center. I think that's a fair point without looking at the future land use map.
Policy 4, I think, concerns me because of the language, the way that it's written. Most public investments are in planned growth in village areas. If you flip it on its head, there should also be, in a land use chapter, investment in conservation and in protecting those areas. So
Yeah.
I think my concern about that, you want to invest in areas that have density and are designated and all that type of thing, but you also need that investment that protects the resources, natural resources that are already there.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Folks online, do you have thoughts or things you want to contribute? Cheryl?
Cheryl, you're muted.
Forgot about that. And that policy number 4, there's a typo where it says areas that are clustered or are, it looks like area a part, should be are a part, I think. Just saying.
Lyle?
So if the planning commission approves the entire plan, I guess I'm going more broadly here. In this instance with land use, will there be governance or preclusions from growth based on this report and this recommendation? Or is this in fact not a recommendation, that this becomes rule somehow within towns?
Becomes rule. It's a criterion in Act 250 that says you have to comply with the goddamn plan, student. And it makes it, whatever nonsense we put out, it makes it cool.
It's not exactly accurate, but partially accurate. Lyle, these land use policies will connect to our future land use map. That future land use map, as you know, is directly tied to Act 181 and the Act 250 reform. A lot of the land use criteria within Act 181 is defined in statute. There's, we have an opportunity to say where that is. Ultimately, we have a future land use map now, folks. And ultimately, I don't see where our map is substantively going to change. Our areas of high density development in our current map are those planned growth areas that we have now. The ultimate question is, what is going to be allowable in those areas outside of the planned growth areas? We do not have that authority. That is a legislative decision that is yet to be made. Those are what we're calling tier 2 areas. However, this will not eliminate the potential for development in rural areas. Let's just get that perfectly straight now. This is not going to say you cannot build a house in Timoth in a rural area. That is not what this is going to say. However, if there's Act 250 jurisdictional issues with development in rural areas, those will likely not apply to the same amount in a planned growth area. So Act 250 is the same as it has always been, and that is not prohibiting these housing developments largely on a single family residence scale in these rural areas. So that being said, the ultimate goal, which is in statute, is to maintain that historic settlement pattern separated by rural countryside, just like the future land use map does and the plan says now. So I just want to eliminate any fears that sort of, you're never going to be allowed to develop anywhere that's outside of these areas. That's not accurate. With that being said, we do have a mandate from the state of Vermont to produce this future land use map with these new criteria. Criteria. And I'd love to hear, are there specific policies that we're not considering, especially in the rural context, or in the commercial context or others? Ultimately, we do need to move on to the next chapter in a few minutes here, but if there are alternatives, whether you present them tonight or in an email or through the survey, we really want to hear those. Okay, we have 9 more to get through. So should we move on, or are there other thoughts on this area? Cool. Logan's got another chapter up next, and that is housing.
Yeah, so the goal we have right now for housing is providing for high quality, safe, diverse, affordable, conveniently located, and energy efficient housing. Those different pieces are kind of parsed out and in these policies more. The first policy is targeting housing growth, programs, incentives that result in people spending no more than 30% of their income on housing and not more than 15% on transportation. Those specific numbers, 30% on housing, 15% on transportation, are standards used both state and federally, and is also included in the requirement for housing, the housing chapter, sorry. The second policy is promoting construction and renovation practices and universal design principles that result in high quality, energy efficient, and safe homes that meet the needs of all. The universal design principles is essentially saying to the greatest ability you can, trying to design a home for everyone, particularly regardless of age. And the kind of the implications of universal design principles is that you build a home so that it's accessible for a wide range of people. And then if people, they get older or they experience some disability, then the home is, to the greatest extent possible, able for them to still live in that home and not need to move or make major modifications that can cost a lot of money. The third policy is about creating diverse homes with varying numbers of bedrooms and price points that are affordable for all households with varying incomes. This is an acknowledgement that households in the region vary from a single person up to 4 or 5 people. And currently, the housing stock in the region is single family homes, and and primarily of 3+ bedroom units. But primarily the demographics in the region are 1 or 2 people. So there's that sort of housing mismatch. So there's a need to create a diverse housing stock. And then the fourth, which ties back to the land use policies we just talked about, and I'd be really interested to hear from everyone and how it relates to housing, is locating housing growth primarily in planned growth in village areas. And which again is those sorts of downtowns and village centers, and you kind of get a sense of where those areas might be looking at our current future land use map. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Is universal design more stringent than ADA requirements?
Universal design principles is it's not just ADA. Yes, it incorporates ADA requirements, but I wouldn't say it's limited to ADA requirements. But do you think it should be, calling out ADA requirements specifically, as opposed to universal design principles? You think, or you're just kind of just clarification?
Have you done any investigation to see if there's a market for that, to see if anybody really wants that part?
Yeah, you're talking about universal design
I
principles?
certainly am.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there are contractors that are doing it right now.
Where?
I mean, there are contractors that are doing universal design principles can be as very, very basic to very, very complex. It's not a one size fits all. There's hundreds of ways you can do it, and it can be very simple or it could be very complex. It's a really
Where's it being done?
across the region. I don't. Do you want me to cite an address for you, or what are you looking for?
I'm want you to tell me it's being done random.
Generally, the Housing Trust of Rutland County projects. So there's 4, the Housing Trust of Rutland County
Okay,
projects.
so it's being done by a government entity with a segment truck. If you guys would just get the heck out of the way and let the people who know how to build do it, it would work a lot better than this stuff. Excuse me, I'm just gonna, before I hurt somebody, I'm just gonna leave.
All right. Other thoughts? Do people share that opinion? I think this is a discussion we need to have, because ultimately there are going to be hard-hitting questions when we get to adoption.
I think the ability for people to design their homes the way that they choose to, is much more important than, some type of universal, because there's, if you're a builder, houses are basically like pretty straightforward for the most part. And it's the personal touches that people put into the houses when they build them that make them their own, and when that house is to be sold, the new homeowner is walking into that house and looking at its limitations, and it's not, again, what that gentleman was saying is mandating a certain style or a certain, and I say mandating very loosely, but it becomes a suggestion, and then it becomes a mandate, and then it becomes a rule, and then all of a sudden there is a building code that Vermont historically has not had in residential building, and that is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
That's something that planners need to recognize, is that people do like to build things the way that they like to have them built.
Yep. And I'll just call out that the policy is focusing on promote, and I hear what you're saying about the sort of, it starts as one thing and it can progress to another thing. In terms of promoting universal design principles, I'm more thinking about what is universal design principles? What what can a homeowner do within their means to incorporate that for themselves if they so choose?
It also comes down to cost. It's
absolutely.
You might be implementing something that is not in the budget for like a young homeowner, a young couple that they're going to be looking for a specific type of house. They're not going to be looking for a 3-bedroom house. Maybe they're looking for a 2-bedroom house that is more efficient. And as their family grows, they move to a different house.
Right.
But you know, if you're going to put something in right off the bat, I mean,
So are you saying affordability should be?
the cost of building right now is, you know, everyone probably knows it. I mean, it's 300 a square foot.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's you know, a couple of years ago, it was even higher, but, you know, to ask young people, and I am absolutely here to promote, you know, young people having children, like, more people having kids is a good thing in this state. Like, we need to take that approach much, much more seriously. But to get people into houses, you know, relax you know, don't put restrictions on people and what they can do.
Yeah. So that, you know, the third policy there talking about, you know, creating diverse homes to meet various needs. So you think from a housing perspective, our policies, do you think we should be kind of more focusing on, you know, promoting a broad diversity of housing, so that there's that sort of, or do you think it's more of a hands-off approach?
So it's a hands-off approach.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like, the demographic in Vermont right now is, and please no one take offense, like, there's a lot more gray-haired people in this state than there are young people your age. You know, and we need to work as a, you know, as a community, we need to work on, you know, getting more young people, growing more young people. Right now, we are looking, you know, you would be looking at, you know, situations where, you know, people are not going to want second-story homes. They're going to want ranches. The demographics that are here now are going to want ramps and this and that. Like, that's to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want the state to, you know, keep growing with, you know, its natural resource of replenishing itself, like, you need to think about affordability for the younger generations that we're trying to get to stay.
Yeah, I want to get to Donna. Donna, you have a question? Thank you, Michael.
Donna, you're muted.
There you
Okay,
go.
okay, thank you. I was surprised not to see anything about having a secondary housing unit on the same parcel of land.
Yeah.
It's a great thought.
You had a question over here.
Well, that goes against some zone, you know, that necessarily would, you know, somehow some towns have zoning, you know, minimum lot size for, you know.
So where applicable then? Yeah, where allowable
Well, I think Vermont's overridden that though.
to some degree.
Yeah.
Square footage wise, you can put an accessory dwelling, you know, that's still attached to a house, but it's not.
No, I think Vermont's overridden that. I think you can put an accessory house pretty much anywhere that a single family house is approved.
That's correct. Yeah, so an accessory dwelling unit, which is a specifically defined term, which includes that it has to be detached, is allowed anywhere. Yeah, as
As long as it meets setbacks.
Yeah,
Well, it has to meet the zoning,
Yeah.
right,
Exactly.
but it's still allowed, still permitted anywhere.
right.
But that just like undercuts, you know, like a town that has zoning, you know, minimum lot size. It just like,
It sure does.
that's.
Yeah.
It's sure, I've seen this come up with apartments over garages that were clandestine, that suddenly became legal.
Yeah. That was common.
Yeah.
Drea,
Well, and I think if we're looking at like historical standpoints too, the support for renovations. I mean, and you have a home or you buy a property with a home on it, and to make it more efficient and to work on supporting more of the renovation than necessarily new builds as well. Especially if you're preserving, like from Danby, we're pretty rural and there have been a lot of houses go up, but there's a lot of older homes that just get demolished instead of revitalized because it's cheaper for someone to build new.
that's a huge opportunity. We have the oldest housing stock in the country, so
And if we're
renovation
looking
would
at
be a
like
good one.
affordable housing, we should be like looking at like these older like mill buildings and conversions and having support there for that.
So that actually brings up an interesting question because we do have the oldest housing stock, but to make it efficient or to make it, you know, compliant, there is a tremendous amount of requirements. You know, so I mean, you have a livable house that's not at an efficiency standard, but it gets torn down because it doesn't meet that. And some of these buildings, I mean, these are beautifully old. I love old houses. They are something that we need to be preserving much, much more than we do, and, we rip out plaster and sheetrock, or plaster and lap, we put in insulation, and it changes the dynamic of these houses. And that's a whole different topic of preserving like the historic, buildings that we have. And they're not necessarily as the pretty ones that you normally see, in downtown, but they do have, they have historical significance, and we should, as a community, think about, how we preserve them, maybe not just gutting them and, exposing the timbers and, that kind of, but anyway, so.
But yeah, I mean, it's just to redo electrical, if any electrician goes in, whether you have zoning or anything, they need to follow codes, and I mean, it's a huge undertaking to redo.
Hillary,
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to say that a lot of these policies to me sound very protective, like maybe protective toward people buying homes. And I think sometimes you can have a little more upfront costs in a house, building a house, like adding extra insulation or using slightly better materials, but then have it be a much easier to heat or last longer. So in the end, be a much better product for somebody moving in. So I just think I wanted to recognize that too, that maybe having a little bit of guidance in terms of, having things be high quality and lasting longer and really efficient and easy to heat, is also good.
Question. I know you said the housing trust is incorporating the universal design principles. But basically, don't they focus on large multifamily projects?
yeah, they're the biggest developer in Rutland County right now.
Yeah. And I think what's being voiced here is how it would affect single family homes. It's anyone building single family homes that we know of that incorporates.
And then maybe that's the distinction, is really focusing this on larger scale development,
I think it's worth noting that, if you're trying to drive development in designated areas, that those are historically built, and universal design principles were not considered. So if there is housing that's available in upper stories, encouraging some type of program or investment to support municipalities or nonprofits or organizations that would take the opportunity to retrofit those into housing. Because it is expensive to do on your own, and that's where you want housing.
Really good, guys. Thank you. Awesome comments. Let's keep going.
There was a question over there.
Oh,
It was typed in the chat.
are there resources guidance on what is high quality energy efficient means?
Yeah, the chapter itself does elaborate on each of those components. So yes.
All right, let's move on. Please, if there's more things you think about, shoot us an email at our regional plan email or mine. It's completely fine. We're gonna move on to economic development, which is Greg.
Economic development is the third chapter in the regional plan, and this really focuses on business and job growth in the region. The broad goal for the entire chapter is just to provide for a strong and diverse regional economy, which is very, very simple. And filling in the blanks there a little bit with these four policies are attracting and focusing future growth in downtown districts and village centers. So this kind of comes back to where that land use chapter is guiding growth. So looking at areas that are already developed and then focusing on infill development and expansion in those pre-existing centers. But that again focusing doesn't mean entirely limiting. So it's a prioritization, not a black and white situation there. And Policy 2 is attracting new businesses and employment opportunities to diversify the tax base. This is not exclusively looking at attracting new businesses, it's also growing existing businesses, but looking to diversify the current regional economy there through business growth and employment growth. Also recruiting new workers and retaining younger adults. So when we look at workforce development, growing the current workforce, you can look at the high school graduates in the region, as well as people who may be relocating to the region. This relates strongly to housing when you look at relocation, but you have high school graduates from schools across the region who are ready to enter the workforce and making sure that the educational system prepares them for jobs that are in demand in the region. So matching what people are learning in school and the other opportunities that are available for them to learn job skills, and then matching that with what is in demand at businesses across the region. And then that last policy there, I know it's really small text, is expand industrial, manufacturing, and trade career opportunities. This is something that we see as a huge focus for growth and also a huge need in the region. So we've seen over the last 20 years a slight decline in population in the region, but a much faster decline in jobs that produce tangible goods, such as manufacturing jobs. And bringing these jobs back would be a huge boon to growing the overall wealth of the region and also providing really secure careers for people here. So those are the 4 policies. I know they're fairly broad. Really hoping to get as much feedback as possible on each of them. And they're based on both research and extensively on all the outreach we did through the first phase of this planning process. But this is a draft, so we're really at the point where we're trying to define, what is the consensus for, moving forward on business and job growth related policies.
Thoughts for Greg?
I have a question. So, as much as I know, even within the city of Rutland, industrial and manufacturing, but the history, Vermont's policies as a whole and as a state seem to push those types of businesses out of the state because of what they mean to transportation, environment, things like that. And I'm curious as to why we're focused on expanding industrial manufacturing, especially the industrial side of that slash, and not more on the technology space, where that thought process.
So
just knowing the restrictions of the state. Sorry.
Yeah. Again, I mean, it's a really good question. I think it's one of those. This is one of those moments to workshop that. I think including the more higher technology side of this into the equation would be fantastic. I think historically we see the slate industry being so huge here, and also having the transportation network via the 4-way connection of the railroads here being a really great setup for just shipping goods to and from the area. So there's some just infrastructure reasons why there's a lot of potential for growth in this area, but I don't think we should make the mistake of looking at this as a sole area of growth. And in the chapter itself, we do look at technology and healthcare jobs and trades and manufacturing, and also more retail and commercial businesses. So there's a holistic look there, but I think adding that more into the policies would be a good idea.
Great, thanks.
Now, when you're talking manufacturing, you're not talking heavy manufacturing, you're talking light manufacturing, or both.
It's a good distinction. Just other people have thoughts on like whether heavy or light would be. Is it important to make that distinction of exclusively focusing on light manufacturing? I think, as Mayor Mike said, that there's a lot of regulatory reasons why heavy manufacturing will be limited by the things outside of the purview of this plan. But
I do think, so policy number 1 is about future growth of type of future growth, because if we're talking about industrial areas, light manufacturing, the downtown districts and village centers are, a lot of them that are designated are somewhat built out. So you need those industrial areas, you need places in the regional plan, you need it badly, whether or not there is, state level regulations or considerations that prohibit it. I don't think we should take it out. I think you need to have those places where industrial development can grow. And downtown districts and village centers are difficult places to locate industrial.
Yes.
Yeah.
So-
So I think you do need the industrial districts, the industrial parks and those kinds of things.
Yeah, so I guess this is a place where there should be more clarification in that policy. And really, the intention behind that is saying future commercial growth in the sense of land uses that are not residential or conservation. But I agree that they should focusing industrial district growth in areas that maybe are more focused toward mixed use or retail space would be a mistake. And the industrial districts that are in the region tend to be close to our designated downtowns and our village centers are those areas, but they're not directly on top of them. They tend to be adjacent to, if anything. And I think that has worked historically well, and I think it's someplace we're trying to continue pushing in that direction. But yeah.
Well, I know this is something you guys talk a lot about in terms of the need for commercial industrial space. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Well, it goes also to development costs and permitting. We are trying to develop right now in the airport industrial park. Frankly, it's going to take us months, if not years, to get beyond some of the permitting issues. Just as an example, we have been asked to do a study of wetlands, not just in the area that we are working on, but also across Route 7, 4 lanes of highway, to investigate how our growth might impact an area far beyond what we feel will be an impact area. So development is not easy. And I think there are a lot of people that would love to see it change a little bit.
But in terms of that need, it's very much needed, right?
Oh, we get calls saying, where is there new commercial industrial space that has 3-phase power, has loading docks, is clean? We have older stock. We do not have new stock.
Right, that's a perfect one to
I
consider.
got a question. Does the plan envision trying to attract remote workers?
Yeah, that's one of the areas that we definitely are looking to for growth. Is that is an opportunity to both bring workers into the region and diversify the tax base without dealing with the many challenges of creating new commercial industrial development. And I think currently the chapter addresses that as an area for growth, but not as something that should supersede targeted and prioritized growth in other areas. As we've seen a huge uptick in the amount of remote work with the COVID era, but I think charting how reliable that growth will be continuing from now on is difficult. So it's not something that can be looked at as the sole strategy for growing jobs in the region, but it is a avenue for doing that.
All right, thank you, Greg. Cultural resources.
Cool. Hey, everybody. Sorry, a note here. So the goal for the cultural resources chapter is to identify, protect, and promote important historic, cultural, archaeological, and scenic features and resources. The draft policies that we've come up with are 1,
to preserve and restore historic buildings, and we can dive into a bit more about what that means. And I think there's a bit of a caveat for all of these, in that underneath each policy is going to be a series of action items and indicators of progress, which both, which will really help us define how we're aiming to achieve these policies. So we can talk a bit more about what those might be. For policy 2, strengthen the intra-organizational relationships and volunteer capacity of historical societies in the region. Policy 3, recognize arts and culture as essential infrastructure for healthy, equitable, and resilient communities. And policy 4, prioritize the identification and preservation of scenic resources. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to elaborate on any of those.
We discussed this in Proctor, and we were concerned about policy 4 of advertising scenic resources in each town that then become overwhelmed and overused. There's a lot of, I think, local resources, scenic things that the locals know about, the locals use and enjoy them, not trying to shut anybody out. But once you start advertising them, they just become too crowded. I mean, the leaf peepers and closing roads off and, all that kind of stuff. It just gets to the point where these small resources in some of these towns just can't handle the sort of crowds that it generates.
Do you see that as being a potential economic gain?
To what?
Capture any of that?
No. I mean, I think people, if people are going to come to visit Vermont, they're going to do their research and they're going to, do what they're going to do. But I think to advertise some of these resources, and I've heard it from other, communities too, just kind of talking, that people are concerned about some of these sites just being overwhelmed by just too many people, and not even tourists, but just, I mean, our example in Proctor is Beaver Pond.
Before you get any further, I just wanted to clarify that, like, in the context of, this policy, the scenic resources is more just like the identification and preservation of, like, a scenic resource could be that ridge on which we don't want to put a cell phone tower, like more so than a cultural asset, like, like, let's go look at, I don't know, the old marble building in downtown Proctor.
Yeah, no, that's fine, but I mean, when was it you that came to talk to Proctor about the map?
Yes.
We expressed concerns that all these things are going to be put on a map, even the small little things.
Right.
And that was our objection.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if, other communities, but just in talking a little bit to different people around, that it does get to be a concern that some of these smaller, intimate resources that some of the towns have loses its character. And it does exactly the opposite of what you're trying to do. All of a sudden these things are overwhelmed and they lose their character, and the locals are kind of shut out because, you go down to these little places and they're crowded.
Certainly.
And, whatever.
No, I mean, there's both a balance and an element of chaos that is inherent in managing these types of resources. And, I think beginning the conversation with identifying these things and creating a plan for their preservation can oftentimes be the best way of getting out ahead of these types of problems. So, I mean, these conversations are, this is really within the scope of, like, municipal planning and town plans, is that we recognized, reading through all the different town plans, there were very different approaches and, efforts to identify and catalog scenic resources within municipalities. And what we would hope to do with this is sort of set out a comprehensive methodology by which each town could approach, and we could look at these things in a more structured manner that would help us, both define the areas that, the residents really do value and want to make sure, are designed in a way to either preserve for local use or to be used as a leverage point for inviting more people into the community and start spending their money.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the Proctor Planning Commission finally decided on is that if it's a facility or an amenity that is advertising to the public, like Wilson Castle or the Marble Company or something like that, you put it on the list.
Yeah.
If it's a small, intimate thing, like some of the small ponds and those kinds of things, you just kind of leave them alone.
Yeah. And that's, you know, that input from the planning commission was pivotal in terms of, you know, us figuring out how we're gonna approach that in the rest of the municipalities as well.
Other thoughts on this one?
I think there are certain seasons here where, you know, sites are not overwhelmed. You know, leaf season and the summer here are pretty busy with tours, but it's kind of quiet in February.
Interesting that my translation of policy 4 is, so I'm in a town and the town is identifying scenic resources that we have and then identifying them and then saying, so what do we want to do now that we've identified, what do we want to do? Like we have a new road coming in. Oh, that's next to the waterfall. Do we really want to do that? Because we've identified it.
Yep.
And for planning, I think that would be wonderful because not everybody knows, you know, or has taken the steps to create the list of these are the things that are really important that we don't want.
Great. Thank you, Nick. Ethan, and transportation, this one's a little bit meatier.
Yep, caught here in some technical terms, some of which are baked in because they refer to laws or other specific concepts. So I'll try to balance making things brief with also trying to explain everything thoroughly. So policy 1 is increase the implementation. Actually, before I start, I just want to read the goal because every single one of these policies is related to a part of this goal statement. So the number 1 goal, and this is in statute, is providing for safe, convenient, economic, and energy efficient regional transportation systems. And that's been a guiding star of this chapter. So the first policy is increase implementations of complete streets infrastructure on town and state roadways. Complete streets is a state policy that basically means looking at the land use, the character of an area, and the potential users, and making sure we're designing for all of those potential users. So in downtown, that might mean providing, say, a bike path on one side, a sidewalk on the other, crosswalks. In a rural area, you know, that might mean you say, you know, this is very rural, everyone's driving here, we've considered other users, and the automobile is going to be the number 1 mode that we're designing for here. So that is something that is really just making sure we're keeping context in mind when defining our roadways, that we're not designing them all the same ways as we have done historically. Policy 2, fairly self-explanatory, improve resiliency of regional transportation systems for increased extreme weather events. Our road network is very vulnerable to flash flooding and potential disruption, which, you know, disrupts people's access to emergency responders, cause all these issues, as well as causing damage that has to be repaired and may or may not be reimbursed by some state or federal agency. So really ensuring that we have transportation systems which are able to withstand the more extreme weather events we're seeing and hopefully be more resilient in the face of crisis. Policy 3 is increasing the development of infrastructure to support transition to electric vehicles. As I said, you know, one of the transportation goals is energy efficient regional transportation systems. The car is really the number 1 way to get around our region. And so therefore, helping to promote electric vehicle use is really the main way of reducing emissions from that sector, transportation, which is one of the largest in the state. Policy 4 is ensuring the provision of convenient and cost-effective public transit services that connect residential clusters with rail stations, employment, recreation, medical services, and shopping. It's a lot of words to basically just say we want the bus to be able to get people to where they want to go, and we want it to do it in a relatively economically efficient manner, which means we want to be serving generally clusters where it is efficient for buses to serve multiple riders. Policy 5 is applying principles of systemic safety to regional roadway systems. Systemic safety is a recently emerging concept where you basically take the entire network and system into analysis, and you look at where the highest potential for accidents. Historically, we generally look at where the accident's happening, let's respond to that, and this is more about saying what factors increase the possibility of accidents, how can we identify those potential danger areas on our road, and how can we slowly work to improve that year after year. Policy 6 is protecting airport airspace and runway clearance for Rutland Southern Vermont Regional Airport through local land use and zoning. The airport is a really important asset, largest state-owned airport, provides crucial connections to Boston. So making sure we're maintaining that airspace, which allows them to maintain that federal funding that fiscally allows them to operate. Because if they lose that runway clearance, they lose the funding, and passenger service basically goes away at the Rutland Airport. So it's important to make sure we're diligent there. Policy 6, increasing passenger rail ridership and encouraging expansion of rail service in the region. Rail is a very energy efficient way of traveling, and it provides great options for folks that may not have access to a car, like, for example, students at Vermont State University Castleton, who are pretty heavy users of the current rail system. Policy 8 is increasing the share of regional freight tonnage that travels by rail. This also relates to energy efficiency. High weight, low value freight is really good to travel on rail because of the efficiency that the energy of transportation system uses. And policy 9 is increasing development within existing built up areas with multimodal infrastructure. A recurring theme around the region is about maintenance, especially of sidewalk networks in some communities. So this is really kind of a policy to address that, you know, the maintenance for the money for the maintenance of sidewalk has to come to somewhere. So one of the best ways to increase that is by getting more development in these areas that already have sidewalks. So you have more property taxes being generated without more infrastructure being created, which can help maintain the entire network in good working order. So that's the current set of policies. I definitely think there's more work to be done. And so I would welcome any comments, thoughts, questions, or discussion on the current draft policies. Sorry, just folks need a second to process all that. I know I just kind of like
a lot of information.
unloaded. There's a lot of modes, you know, planes, trains, automobiles, bicyclists, pedestrians.
Anecdotally, I cannot stand the bike lanes that are going in. They are, as a driver, as someone who sees the potential liability of bicyclists so close to so many automobiles, I do not think that I do not think that is a very wise decision. And
safety.
Safety. I mean, we're using, you know, we're taking away space from, you know, because the roads are designed for cars. They're not designed, you know, and I had a long debate whether, you know, bicycles should be on the roads or should be on sidewalks, and legally they're supposed to be on roads, not on sidewalk. And I don't agree with that. I would just see bicycles as far away from automobiles as possible. And it restricts, you know, the ability of traffic to flow. I mean, Route 7 going up, you know, that suddenly changed down to, you know, a single lane, and, you know, we will get used to it, but I don't think it has made, you know, the traffic flow better. I could be wrong, but as I've traveled it does not seem to be an improvement. The other thing that I want to just touch on really quickly is, you know, when we talk about infrastructure for electric vehicles, you know, at some point, you know, electricity is going to become a much bigger issue than it is right now. And we are in an area where electrical vehicles work as long as we have electricity. And I really think the importance of the internal combustion engine is being understated, like, gravely. I mean, it is, for the area that we live in, you know, it is a wonderful resource. And to see energy going towards, you know, more electric vehicles, like, they have a place, they absolutely do, but, you know, to promote them, you know, to the point where it's just ludicrous, I would just cool my jets on electric vehicles. And they are here to stay, they have a place, but, you know, they have a lot of, you know, issues still to be resolved.
Well, and it's like with that, in the winter, they're less efficient because of the cold. Like, I know people who drive them, they say their time on them in the winter goes down as opposed to summer. And then we keep having all these natural disasters and parts of the grids are out and everybody's dependent on them. Their transportation is null and void.
Yep, those are great points. And I do want to sort of state that I think the way I'm framing the chapter is really about choice, is that you should be able to choose which kind of vehicle you want to drive. And right now, a lot of people can't necessarily choose to have an EV because they don't have that infrastructure. So really, it's about just supporting enough infrastructure that to allow people to make up their mind about what mode is really best for them at that time. And if it's internal combustion engine, then that's what you get. But if it's an EV, and that's what you get. But I don't want infrastructure to be a barrier. For example, if you live in an apartment building, it's really, really difficult to even have an EV because you don't own the property. You cannot set up an energy charging situation without the landlord. And the operating cost of owning them is significantly lower than the ICE vehicles. So I can imagine there's plenty of folks who are really worried about their wallet. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure there's infrastructure to allow people to make their own choices. So I don't think it's about forcing anyone to use anything, but if it's not a choice, then I think that's not necessarily great, especially when you have a whole lot of incentives for these EVs to make them cheaper. And if those are only going to people on the upper end of the income scale because people who are living in apartments can't even access them, it's not a choice. Then I think that's an issue personally.
I don't know, is there a policy section on energy?
Yes.
Okay,
chapter.
because it might come to that. We had in here, Velcro came and gave us a presentation on how they're upgrading their lines. That's nice, but nobody's heard from Green Mountain Power yet, how they're going to get the power to our homes. And I think that also ties in with the electric vehicle. How do you charge it? Now, I have 100 amp service at my house. I can't have an electric car. If I have an electric car, then I have to turn off the television or not run the dryer. It becomes a load management problem.
So totally fair point, and we do have an energy chapter to get to.
Okay.
We're really bearing down on time. Are there non-EV? I feel like we got this one covered. Are there non-EV related policies we want to talk about with transportation? Safety, rail, freight,
I would like
transit.
I would like to see more utilization of rail for transportation through the state. I know it's a hard ask. I know there's a lot of forces against us on it, but I do think
You want those bud cars out there?
I want those. I think the bug cars are rusting in place at this point, but I do think that there's, in a state that is rural as we are, and looking at how other locations use rail transportation to get between those rural locations and how successful it is. I think there's a real advantage for Vermont to do it and do it on the cheap.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Is it economical though?
It can be.
Looking, I'm gonna say this and no more. I can drive to New York City cheaper and faster than I can ride on the train.
Until you have to park in New York City.
That's right.
Yeah. I got a garage.
I think the convenience factor is a big thing for folks.
I actually have taken the train to New York a number of times, and the thing you can't do when you drive is you could work on the train. So I take it down on Friday. All that time I'm spending traveling, I'm actually working on being productive while I'm doing it, rather than just driving in a vehicle where I can't do anything. So it really depends. And again, I think for me, transportation comes down to choice. Everyone should be able to choose.
What I found, New York to Rutland, you take the train out of Albany to New York.
Yeah.
And then, because coming out of New York, you have a train almost every hour. And there was one day I got out of a meeting, took the 3:00 train, got to Albany, got my car, drove up here. At the same time, the 2:00 train from Rutland was pulling in, from New York was pulling into Rutland. So rail service needs some work.
But you're talking about regional train traffic, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the logistics of that is, I have 4 vehicles I own 4 vehicles. Like the opportunity to get on a train and ride slowly from Castleton to Rutland or from Rutland to Danby, most of us drove here. It's like the automobile is still for most people, it is the most efficient way for individuals because they're not on a set schedule of, at 10 o'clock, you need to go make the train. It is when I get everything done. And I love trains. Trains are, they are the most efficient way to move you know, other than water, which we don't have a lot of, like, that is the way to move freight and stuff. But people in a, you know, in a setting like that as a recreational, just, I think that's a much, much harder sell.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not saying replace automobiles, by any stretch of the imagination. I'm saying in addition to automobiles or bikes, whatever your transportation, having rail for commuting purposes, for getting from place to place, to go, for, especially throughout the state, I can put 100 people on a train that uses the same amount of energy that 10 cars do. So there's a lot of efficiencies there. It's not just about efficiency, it's about convenience for those people that don't want to commute via a car. I think, you know, back and forth, there's people, it's probably about, if I remember correctly, like 1,200 people that drive back and forth between the Rutland region and Burlington every day in vehicles, back and forth. So if we put them on the train, that would certainly save some energy there.
Other than the faster train.
Yeah, it would have to be. Oh, yeah,
absolutely. All right.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
We have a deeper
Yeah,
discussion.
one more.
One
Yeah.
more, yeah, so I don't, policy for, sorry, this is a different, going in a different direction. I mean, it's really interesting to me that we spend a lot of time talking about how much, people spend on housing because it's defined for affordable housing. But, we don't spend so much time talking about how much people spend on, cars and insurance and gas and all of that type of thing. When we have a demographic that is in Rutland County that, you know, has a lower household income and those types of things, I think it's worth kind of looking at that and trying to emphasize it somehow in the policies. I mean, policy 4 says cost effective public transit service. I almost wonder if there is a way to kind of strengthen that, and really kind of hone in on that, how much people spend on just driving themselves around Rutland County to get to their job or to get to what they need to go to.
Absolutely. Yeah. 700,000 people a year take the bus. It's huge.
I walk to work every day and I can tell you I save a lot of money with my transportation costs.
Is that in Rutland County or across the state?
Rutland County.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, shall we? Thank you. That's all fantastic stuff. Enhance energy. This is another big policy one right here. And we're almost there, folks. We have a couple more to get through.
Right here, so I can see this. So this is the enhanced energy chapter. The goal of the chapter, even better, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, provide for renewable energy, and make efficient use of energy. So this has the most policies out of all the chapters. Part of the reason for that is that 80 to 90% of these are statutory requirements. And so there's only a couple policies on here that are not obligated to be on here. The reason that's a statutory obligation is because the enhanced energy plan gives the RPC the authority to approve towns' enhanced energy plans. And so the RPC needs an enhanced energy plan, have that trickle down to be able to approve the town's energy plans. So I'll go through these. I tried to write them in a way that they should be very self-explanatory. So this should be relatively quick. So policy one is to demonstrate regional leadership by implementing efficiency and fuel switching actions. Policy 2, promote adoption of enhanced energy plans to all municipalities in the region. Policy 3, ensure regional enhanced energy plan is equitable. 4, prevent forest fragmentation and preserve priority forest blocks. 5, educate individuals and organizations about energy conservation. 6, increase building efficiency, climate resilience, and safety. 7, switch from fossil fuels to sustainable alternatives for heating, cooling, and transportation. 8, provide education about transportation, energy conservation, and combustion alternatives. 9, decrease single occupancy vehicle trips. 10, maintain existing and develop new walking and biking infrastructure. 11, ensure energy generation siting adheres to orderly development. 12, review Act 250 permits for energy efficiency and Section 248 applications to meet renewable targets. And 13 is maximize potential for renewable generation on preferred sites. All right. Thoughts?
Do we scrap the whole thing? No, I'm dead serious. There's so many things in there that, I mean, Jerry and I have had these conversations. And I don't need to make this meeting any longer than it is, but you know, like the idea, the concept that there is a green energy, it's a fallacy. You know, like we really need to recognize that, you know, oil is like, it's still going to be a major contributor to home heating and vehicles. It just is, you know, like the idea that, you know, the effects of putting solar panels up in all over the state, you know, doesn't have a detrimental effect down the road to the next generations. You know, like we're kidding ourselves. Like there is no green energy. There's no such thing as a green energy. And you know, maybe the state has mandated it, but you know, it's beginning to come back around to show that, you know, these policies, this whole approach isn't necessarily as beneficial as, you know, people are led to believe. And I could go on entirely on all 13 of those, but it is late and I know everyone else is tired.
No, that's fair.
No, I think looking at alternative energy, we need to evaluate what suits each situation the best. Like solar isn't always the answer. Like wind isn't always the answer. Like hydro, geothermal, like looking at alternative energy is a much broader scope than just solar, which I feel like we're hyper focused on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like really vetting like what is gonna serve this purpose better. Like our hydro, we don't use hydro. And like that's a huge underutilized energy source.
Most of our electricity actually does come from hydro from Canada.
Right, because we sold the rights.
Well, a small percentage of it.
Because it doesn't.
No, it's the
largest
single
Right.
fuel source
Hydro.
for electricity in Vermont is hydropower from
Right.
hydro.
Well, didn't we, it was my understanding we sold our hydro rights to Canada.
No, the hydro exists in Canada and it gets transferred down here. So it's northern Quebec. Hydro Quebec is the company.
You did bring up an interesting thing though about like solar's not the only thing. You know, as part of the regional plan engagement, we had folks weigh like which of those alternatives do they like. Right now, our regional plan does not allow any industrial wind in the region at all and to preserve the ridge lines. That's planning to be in the plan this time around. Do folks agree with that?
I think if it fits the situation, like if, like how efficient are they gonna be if.
I think we looked at the ridge lines and wind power in the past several years when it first started being developed. Ridges aren't the place for wind power.
Yeah.
You can't maintain it and it won't function. The wind's too variable. But going back to the gentleman on the end there, yeah, I think fossil fuel is going to be around for a long time. But the thought that haunts me is that fossil fuels have been used for over 100 years. Isn't it time for something else? Question is what that something else is.
I think, you know, actually to tie into, you know, Vermont used to have hundreds of dams. You know, we had the ability to generate, you know, water is one of the most efficient ways to, you know, transport goods and to, you know, go up Route 7. There is a power plant right across the road GMP or, it is it is a very inefficient motor. It only produces like 47% efficiency, but it was made in like 1911. It was made really, really well, and it just keeps clipping away. Just it's free electricity for them. And as a regional planner, wouldn't it be interesting if people started developing, resources? We have a lot of water. And water flows.
That's all our towns are developed around. All of our roads
Yeah.
are based on water rates.
When Proctor was all hydro at one point.
Well, because you have all the paper mills, you have all the mills.
We don't have paper mill.
No. What we do?
Woolen.
Oh, not in Proctor.
No, I'm just saying in general.
Yeah.
No, in general.
right,
It was
right.
like
I was playing right in center Rutland
Yeah,
for years.
yeah.
And I mean, you look at that waterfall, that could churn a lot of
I mean,
electricity.
I think hydro is really underutilized.
Okay, some more hydro. Any of these other pieces?
Yeah, I mean,
folks?
my concern is the focus on electricity is at some point, the electricity is gonna have a monopoly and then we're all gonna be screwed.
If the grid fails.
Yeah, I mean, if it fails, I think we have to be developing alternatives to just electricity. I mean, you get to a certain house and a certain age or whatever, and it just isn't economically efficient to convert to all electric heat, for example, or, all electric, whatever. It just, for me to put in like splits and heat pumps and all that, I'm talking, I don't know, $8,000 to $10,000 to do my house. The payback's over 10 years. That means nothing to me because I'll probably be gone in 10 years. So I mean, I think just demonizing oil and propane and whatever is not a good approach. I mean, the oil companies and the propane companies have kept a lot of people employed for a lot of years. And I know there's pollution issues, but you can get cleaner, more efficient oil burning, propane burning, heating elements. And just to put all of our eggs into one electric basket, I think is a mistake.
So one thing, before we go on, Dave, one thing I do think we all need to sort of like remember as commissioners when reviewing this plan is that, poking holes in the plan is what we need. Poking holes in legislation is what we don't. Like, I totally understand we might not love the state level politics, but that is what our mandate is. And until that mandate changes, we have to comply. So
Right, but
think about
but there
constructing.
needs to be a little pushback to those mandates. And if our regional plan says, here's a little pushback, let's consider these things, maybe somebody in Montpelier will listen.
Well, we just run the risk of not getting a plan approved by the.
Well, no, but you can put comments in there that says there needs to be other alternatives to just the focus on electricity.
We will certainly
Yeah.
include.
Say the word.
Yep. Barbara, you have a comment?
Well, I don't see the word electricity there in enhanced energy. I think that maybe I'm missing it, but in the 13 policies, I don't see it. I think we can all agree that if we look at the goal, I think we can all agree to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, provide for renewable energy, and make efficient use of energy. And it might be better not to debate which of the alternatives or to say something critical about electricity. Just keep it the way it is. That's what I would propose.
Devin?
Yes.
I think what's missing here in regard to electric vehicles, electric heat and whatnot, is input from the power company. What they can provide and what they foresee.
And Devin, remind us how often we have to update the regional plan. This plan will live for
8 years.
8 years, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Starting in 2026.
Yes, after it's adopted, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, we're gonna move on. Really appreciate all those comments. They're very good. So working lands is next, which is Barbara.
Yeah, got a couple chapters here, working lands and natural resources. So if you, as you get
further into a regional plan, things start blending and maybe competing at times. Working lands, the goal here from the state is encourage and strengthen agricultural and forest industries. So 4 policies here we've come up with. Stop the loss of farmland and forest land to development. Ensure that the working landscape, which is ag, forestry, and value-added production industries that are part of those, is a strong asset for the region's economy. Ensure that the working landscape improves the health of residents and enhance the health and diversity of the region's ecosystems to benefit local ag and forestry. All right, we've got working lands. We've got 2 industries that are traditional. One is very much in transition, agriculture. So that's covered extensively in the chapter. We're no longer a dairy county. We produce as much milk, but we have very few dairy farms. We have many other kinds of farms and food-related economies. Forestry is traditional. And it's doing about what it's done in the past, but its importance to land use is increasing, and to natural resources too. It's all part of the holistic ecosystem point of view.
Thoughts on this one? Additions, comments? Did you have our first perfect plan chapter? All right.
Check.
Up to you. No. All right.
So on to natural resources. The goal here is to maintain and improve quality of natural resources, provide for wise and efficient use of natural and earth resources. Just to take a little sidestep here, what we heard in the first phase of our outreach to the public is protecting the natural landscape was one of the most important and agreed upon topics. Water resources and forests are cherished, and there's a need to improve accessibility for beginners and persons with disabilities to natural resource sites. So because natural resources is a catch-all category, lots of policies here for this chapter. They have to cover what's underground, what's running on the ground, what's in the air, what's coming as far as the new plastics getting into our systems, new chemicals getting into our systems, and the critters that are on our county lands and what they need to survive. So policy number 1, safeguard groundwater and other local drinking water sources to ensure they are safe for the public. Number 2 is ensure that all surface waters in the region are of high quality, free of pollutants and toxins, and suitable for recreation and aquatic life. 3, attain no net loss of wetland acreage. Keep wetlands the way they are, or maybe even expand them. Number 4, increase the amount of protected shoreline buffers and riparian areas in the region. 5, maintain water quality to sustain existing aquatic communities and to ensure the natural diversity of aquatic species. 6, create a regional approach to maintaining and restoring the health of forest blocks, forest fragmentation, wildlife corridors, habitats, and biodiversity, and for conserving land in alignment with the Vermont Conservation Plan that's designed to protect 30% of the state by 2030 and 50% by 2050. Policy 7, be proactive about local air quality during summer ozone and winter inversion episodes. That's when wood smoke gets trapped closer to the ground surface than it normally does. And do this by monitoring the state's data to address those at most risk, people with heart or lung diseases, older adults, children, and people with lower socioeconomic status. Number 8, encourage the reduction of nighttime light levels to improve the health of residents and wildlife and to promote dark sky astrotourism. We haven't had that in the plan before. Number 9, promote safe and clean mineral extraction methods if appropriately managed and the public interest is clearly benefited. But lots of turf to cover there in that chapter.
Yeah.
I mentioned this in our bigger group when we were discussing it. So I struggle a little bit with policy number 3. Not necessarily because, you know, I'm all for protecting wetlands, but Vermont's definition of wetlands really can be difficult for property owners that literally have a low-lying piece of land on their property that is wet for some of the time, right? To the point that there are wetlands within Rutland City that are not connected to any contiguous pond, lake, stream, or, right? It just happens to be where the water happens to sit for too long over a period of time. And it because of Vermont's rules and regulations around wetlands, it becomes a huge hindrance to property owners. So I totally understand protecting wetlands, but saying attain no net loss of wetland acreage might be a little aggressive, especially when we look to some of the other things we're trying to do, at least in our community.
Because our water table's changing, so the wetland fluctuates.
Yeah, the state always had issues mapping them correctly. And you know, there's different grades of wetlands. And so, yeah, we could possibly integrate that in
Yeah,
here.
maybe oversight a little bit,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go for policy 8, the new one. I think, you know, in talking about, again, the development areas and villages and where you want more density to go, it might be useful to think a little bit about where exactly those we would want to try to take more action about protecting dark skies. I know there was an Act 250 application that business ran into it with a dark sky protection and night lighting that was in an area of definite sprawl on Route 7 had already existed, and Act 250 added some contingencies about lighting a business there that you know it's already, the area is already fairly lit. So I think it would be worth looking into that a little bit further in terms of where that would be most important.
Yeah, and would most likely, it would be in the most remote areas of the county and not developed areas. It's just what this is trying to get to.
Other policies?
I heard in number 7.
Yeah.
I might have you mentioned wood smoke. I didn't see that written down. That might be a normal way to react, but that may not be the total cause of pollution in the Rutland area, especially during inversion events. It's probably something trapped to traffic more than wood smoke.
Yeah, and overall the air quality is not bad even during, you know, those colder months. There are some more concerns, increasing concerns about the smog in the summer because of vehicles and the warmer temperatures. So this policy is suggesting we keep an eye on both of those things.
Thanks.
Is it possible just for you to send me more detail about policy?
Which one?
Policy
9?
Yes.
What do you want to know?
How we want to promote safer and cleaner mineral extraction, because I mean it's a huge part of our
50% of the state's mineral extraction comes from Rutland County. It's a huge industry.
So I think it's mostly saying as new methods come online, the new technology, that those are promoted, that the preferences that they are used. so that it stays as clean, but as profitable as it has been.
Just because in our town, that's a contentious issue right now.
Yes.
Oh, we know. Yeah. But it's an important industry. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I just personally, it's hard to see the crossover of, that's working land, but it's in our natural resources and not necessarily in like the farm and agriculture sector.
Yeah, statute makes
Because
the
it's
weird
more,
distinction.
because
Yeah.
it's industrial and how it's done, but.
Yeah, it's weird how they say this is a natural resource because it came out of the earth, whereas ag and forestry are from the earth, so yeah.
It's like their surface and this is.
It feels a little out of place, but that's where it's always lived.
And that's where ag and forestry have always lived.
Right.
Right.
That's the working landscape and only.
We could potentially break them all, but.
Don't have any questions.
Yeah, Donna.
Okay, so policy number 6, what percentage of land is now protected in Vermont? Because it looks like 30%, that's the goal for 2030 and 50 by 2050.
Yeah, it's relatively new legislation. There's still a lot of public comment being solicited on it. And the numbers are still being assessed. And also, where do you fit in public lands, state and forest lands that are basically conserved? But do they go to these goals that the legislature wants? So that's all in the works.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, Donna, we did like a super high level analysis using state and federal land. And if you took all the pieces in Rutland County, we're at about 29% already.
Oh, wow. Okay.
If that's allowed in the rulemaking or not. So it'll TBD, right?
Right.
Exactly. Okay. Is there some way that the legislature hears our voice, like from Rutland County Planning Commission, and what everybody has to say? Because it sounds like they don't hear us. The legislature. It just sounds like, I hear this at planning commission meetings. I hear it from the public. I'm hearing it from all of you. And there's got to be some pushback, as the other gentleman was saying, to know what Vermonters really want.
Okay, we can sort of talk about that as invite some legislators from the region and have that be a separate meeting. You know what I mean?
That would be great.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay. Let's keep going. Thank you, Barbara. Great job. Oh boy, this one is mine and it's dense as well. I will do my best to get through it. Okay, facilities and public utilities chapter. It's a big one because it kind of encompasses recreation, healthcare, education, your municipal facilities, state facilities, all of it. So it's a broad topic, a lot of policies. The scale and type of facilities and utilities shall support existing and future development. So trying to make this consistent with the future land use chapter. Water, wastewater, and stormwater should be expanded, upgraded, and maintained in economically and environmentally sustainable manner to serve areas designated in the plan. So again, where we have those development areas. Municipal offices, garages, libraries, and other facilities should be constructed, maintained, or upgraded to serve the diverse needs of the community, which are rapidly changing. Municipal shared services and resources should be considered to improve quality and reduce costs. Solid waste districts and transfer stations should be coordinated to reduce costs and waste and improve efficiency and sustainability. Telecommunications infrastructure and service shall be expanded to unserved and underserved permanent residents while protecting the scenic and natural resources. This is really considering cell tower siting and expanding cell service in the region, since our broadband is already largely built out. Energy transmission lines and substations shall be constructed to provide resilient and reliable energy while avoiding critical natural resources. The construction, maintenance, and marketing of recreational trails, parks, and water resources encouraged for all user types. And really, that's a big focus there. School construction, consolidation, and renovation should increase efficiency, reduce tax burdens, and improve equitable education. Workforce programming and capacity shall be expanded in critical sectors like education, healthcare, and trades. The regional network of childcare facilities and providers should be expanded to meet the current and future workforce needs in areas designated in the plan. Again, thinking where our large workforce centers and economic centers are, and making health or childcare near those jobs. And then finally, access to healthcare, mental health services, and recovery treatment should be centered on advancing health equity. There's a lot there. Thoughts? What is missing? It's a big topic.
I think you should throw something in there that utility lines should be buried wherever possible, wherever feasible.
And are you really thinking like on the resiliency side or also
Scenic,
scenic? Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. That's great.
You'd remove the word equity at every opportunity. Wouldn't hurt my feelings at all.
Okay. Any other kind of big areas, shared services, school
I'm
consolidation?
not a huge fan of the school consolidation.
Yep. And that's not saying we should consolidate. It's saying where we do it should be for the best of the students and to reduce tax burdens.
Right, I think there should be more focus on the efficiency and renovation of the buildings. And assistance for that.
Strangely enough, that was the conversation this afternoon.
Yes,
Yeah, we
Well,
did talk about that.
I mean, we're talking about wanting to have a younger workforce and more people, and if we're successful in that, then we will have more enrollment in our schools, and if we consider consolidation instead of revitalization, then we're gonna screw ourselves.
Good point.
Well thought out.
Oh, I think about that.
Maybe your new marketing campaign should be go make babies.
Oh, yeah.
Seriously, like Rutland Regional, go make some babies.
Devin,
Yeah.
you're talking about consolidation and revitalization. Couldn't they-
Renovation. Yeah.
Renovation, could they work together?
You feel my notes?
Yeah. Consolidation and reno.
Because it may not pay to renovate a school unless you consolidate it, and then you end up with a better school for everybody.
Also, a lot of you work in town government, our town officials, thinking about like what are the priorities with your own community? What are the biggest costs? Are we adequately really addressing some of those, this municipal burden? Yeah, Lyle.
As we consider school consolidation or renovation, just a factoid that was recently thrown out by a school construction committee, was that the current need for renovations in public schools is $6 billion. That's $300 million a year for the next 21 years. And so it's something to consider as we look at aging infrastructure and should it be saved? Should it be consolidated? I totally understand that schools are the community centers for most of our small towns. We may want to look at how high schools are being used. Just Lyle's opinion.
It's a great, thank you, Lyle. Donna.
Okay, policy 11, do we know how much need there is for childcare in Rutland County?
Yeah, I cannot pull that. Do you remember that data point?
Specifically, no.
No, it's fairly significant. And actually it's kind of like how unemployment works. You know, it's really based on who's looking for it. And
The whole thing.
there's a lot of folks who have given up or they just can't plain afford it. So it's a bit of a moving target, Donna, but we do know the need is huge. And under the universal child care bill that passed last year, there's going to be need for 3,300 workers statewide and several hundred of those in our county.
Well, I know there's some towns too that have no childcare
Period.
period.
Yeah.
Like there aren't any registered daycares and, you know, depending on where people are working versus where they have older children in schools versus where childcare is available, it's a really hard bridge.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts on this too, Donna?
Well, at the Pittsford Village Farm, we are putting in a child care facility. And then we were asked again, are you sure there's a need for it? And I was just really shocked by it because I've done some of the research and I didn't think it had changed that much, especially for the infants. And that is going to have a component. There'll be for, I think it was 0 to 3-year-olds. And you know, I was just really surprised by the school that had asked us about that. They were thinking about having a second school and using the facility at the Pittsford Village Farm. So I didn't think it had changed, but I wondered what you came up with for numbers. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, love the kids, but there's gotta be elder care facilities.
Awesome.
They're just, I mean, I know 3 families right now that are debate, you know, sell their house to afford elder care. I mean, it's just, it is not affordable. Talk about, you know, childcare not being affordable. When you're asked to pay $10,000 a month to go into an elder care facility, that is not affordable.
It's childcare.
That, you know, and there's a lot of people that are facing that. And it's, I mean, there's more elder people than there are kids in this state.
Yes.
Fantastic.
And it needs to be dealt with and something, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're coming offline faster than they're going online.
Yep.
Great. Any last ones for this? We have one more. Thank you all for bearing with us. This is fantastic input and it's really going to help us, you know, focus this next draft. So when we bring it to you, which we know Commissioner Spencer is really anxious about, we will have something that represents your priorities to a better extent. So with that, final chapter, Maggie's going to take us through climate resilience.
Yeah, a little nervous to share this one considering the reception to the rest of the plan, but I want to still get home. So, so our goal is to encourage climate resilient communities. Really simple, only 4 words, but there's a little more to it than that. Resiliency is made of 2 components, one being mitigation, which is the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, which some of these other chapters speak to, and also adaptation, which is essentially putting in those infrastructures and policies that will help you better withstand those storms and bounce back quicker. So that's what we mean by climate resiliency. So the 4 policies that we have from that goal, policy 1 assists municipalities in understanding their vulnerabilities and strategies to bolster resilience to climate change. This is kind of thinking about it from like a logic model type perspective. You can't develop a strategy to become more resilient if you don't know what your vulnerabilities are. So doing that first step of information gathering and better understanding, you know, where are our greatest risks and what can we do to adjust those risks, kind of like a local hazard mitigation plan. Policy number 2, preparing municipalities for longer duration, higher temperature heat waves. Data has shown that each year keeps breaking records, and Vermont is a climate that is more acclimatized to colder weather and also has structures that are meant to keep heat in. So we foresee this being a problem going forward. And we want to make sure our municipalities are prepared for that. Policy number 3, implementing more natural systems-based projects that will help moderate the impacts of climate change. So science and research has shown that utilizing the functions of the land is the best way to mitigate the impacts of things like flooding. For example, if you have more open land areas, more wetlands to absorb that water, then you're going to have less damage to property. basically addressing it as close to the source as you can. And one thing we discovered with the hazard mitigation grant program, the latest round of funding, is that we don't have many natural systems-based projects in the region. So we want to try to make it more of a priority to seek out where we can put those and where they make the most sense. And then policy number 4, increase social cohesion to bolster community resilience during and after extreme weather events or disasters. That might seem a little off base to you, but I would point you back to the goal of encourage climate resilient communities, emphasis on communities, because research has shown that communities that have stronger social relationships are more efficient and more effective at bouncing back quicker and helping residents recover and get back to what we consider normal life. So really just building those relationships, even if it's just a cup of coffee over several months of meetings, is something that could be a first step towards that community strategy. Any questions?
What's missing? What do you like about it? What do you have an issue with?
Climate change. Whole thing.
Besides that, what about like flooding or the things that we've been seeing impacts wise?
So we have been upsizing culverts to a ridiculous level in the state, both since Irene. Yes, summers are warm, but summers are always warm. I mean, I do appreciate the concept of, communities coming together over coffee and because that is how, when something happens, it's the people, it's the fire department, it's the local people that are going to make things happen. But again, like we are making, and I'm sure that I'm not everyone may agree with my perspective on climate change, but we have been told that the sky is falling since I was in grade school. Like weather is weather, it changes, it adapts, like we adapt with it. And there's no amount of, you get a certain storm in a certain area. I mean, everything around here, every community that we have is a man-made concept. We have taken out trees, we have moved forests, we have made these things. So the effects of heavy weather are, whatever happens to our, infrastructure is a direct result of us, affecting the land. It is not necessarily, the effect of greenhouse gas. I mean, the idea that, everyone is going along with the idea that greenhouse gases are a bad idea. It's a bad concept, again, like this might be like a little strange to some people, but we are going to start shifting back to a different mode of thinking that the sky is falling. It's a bit much for me.
Any specifics on these policies without sort of getting into the big philosophical debate?
I enjoy the idea of sitting down and making, time with your neighbors and cultivating a culture of community is a great idea.
Yeah, we saw up north with the recent disaster in the Northeast Kingdom, most of the recovery efforts and response were volunteers.
Yep.
And they still are today. It's amazing. That's what Vermont's built on. Yeah. Cultivating. Barbara, I see your hand.
Oh, I was just wondering if, I don't see it here in climate resilience, it might be somewhere else. If we have something about identifying, doing an inventory of potential areas where there could be negative impact, especially from flooding, both by where it's happened in the past, but also because it is changing, where it might be apt to happen in the future. Especially since we now have these storms that bring so much rain in such a short period of time, that changes the calculus.
Yeah, I think that's policy 1, really, understanding those vulnerabilities.
And actually having a written inventory of them, not just understanding them, but the county plan, including an appendix or something, or, that in some way we'd really be identifying or trying to identify. Or get Castleton University to help us identify.
So this is not covered specifically in the regional plan, but that is what a local hazard mitigation plan does. That is where you're going to find that information, is where the flooding is most common and where that intersects with assets that are at risk.
But I think the one challenge some municipalities might have with working with the vulnerabilities is some of the environmental conflicts with, like, if we want to clear our waterways to help water flow better. I know there's some restrictions, you know, if you want to clean your rivers, you have certain environmental restrictions. So having those resources, that information available to towns would really benefit them to see what they can and can't do to help mitigate some of those issues.
Right, that kind of fits into the whole understanding component.
Yeah, it's like, well, if I clean this river, it'll flow better, but then, you know, you have the restrictions, so.
Any other thoughts? We did it. Oh my God, we did it. Wow. Thank you.
And before your laptop died, because it was right on.
It was close. Yeah.
Jack made a comment in the regional committee. Could you put it on the energy part, just having a battery storage review criteria in 240, so it doesn't get lost? I have a note to do it, but it seems like it should
Yes.
be memorialized in this.
Here, let me stop sharing so I don't give anyone that.
And while Devin is doing that, I think we should all thank everybody on the staff who wrote these things to save us the problem of having to do it ourselves. So thank you all for all of your efforts. I know you're going to see the comments that we made, and some of them are kind of snarky, but thank you all.
Well, it's a huge undertaking, and it just gives a
Extremely.
different perspective to give more feedback on.
Well, they got the feedback from us. And now maybe I can sleep.
Yeah.
Maybe we can all sleep, but thank you all for the first draft. You all did a great job. And continuing on, the regional committee report. Is there anything?
Leona, do you want to
Yeah.
deliver that? Great.
Do you want to cover it quick or do you want me to do it?
You got it.
Okay, so there were, 3 section 248, proposals. One was, a solar, field in North Clarendon. We voted to, approve that particular,
So that will be a recommendation of.
that's a recommendation by us, thank you. The second one was, again, solar in Brandon. The town of Brandon had initially wanted to do this themselves and couldn't. So, they asked a company to take it over. Again, it was not, it was in compliance with our plans, so we are supporting that. The third one was, a plan for, battery storage facility in West Rutland. And on that one, we just chose to take no stance at this time.
So we will need a.
Yes, we need a motion on your North Clarendon. Can you?
So I can clear up that if you want. So the motion would be recommending to the full board signing, sorry.
The letter.
There it is. Designating a preferred site for the Silver Silo Solar 150 kilowatt in North Clarendon, and a letter citing preferred site for 500 kilowatt solar array in North Clarendon for, sorry, I just conflicted those. 500 kilowatts of Silver Silo solar. That is brutal. Who did that? In North Clarendon. And 150 kilowatt solar array in Brandon for Novus, Brandon Solar.
May I have a motion to accept the recommendation of the regional committee report? He said,
I'll make the motion saying that I made the motion that first, not yet.
okay, may I have a second on the motion to approve the letters?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed? All those opposed? Good, the ayes have it, you can write the letter. Executive Finance Committee report?
Yeah, the Executive Finance Committee met on Tuesday, October 15th. It was for informational purposes only, looking at the agenda. No action was taken.
Hey, regional partners.
Lyle, do you have anything? Oh, yeah, you gotta do your plug for tomorrow.
I'm the last one between you and going home, so I will be very quick. If you have nothing else to do tomorrow night, come to our annual meeting at the Paramount Theater from 5 to 7. Great food, and we will have a business pitch competition that you will not want to miss. We'll be giving away 3 checks, 2 grand prizes of $20,000 in basically packages of support, and a $5,000 cash prize donated by a local credit union to be named tomorrow night. So come and check it out, 5 o'clock, Paramount Theater. That's my advertisement.
Thank you, Lyle.
Thank you. Ex officio members?
I guess that's technically Lyle.
Okay, Commissioner Roundtable, do we have any?
I think we can safely skip it.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
So I'm here because, Bob Floyd is no longer with us.
What?
Oh, no.
So
When did that happen?
that happened last week,
Oh my
just in
God.
case anyone was wondering why.
No, I'm
Just,
so sorry, Michael. That's awful. Yeah, so
yeah, he was.
Commissioner Lloyd's been here for
Ever.
forever. Yeah. When's the service?
I don't know.
Okay.
You could contact the town clerk, Gail.
Okay, yeah. Wow.
But anyway,
Wow.
sorry I didn't mention that earlier. I didn't know who or who didn't know, but.
Yeah, no, we hadn't heard. And thanks for coming. I know you've been the alternate for a while. And
I've
it's
never
great
been
that you're here.
But I had to go coming back.
Good. I hope you do. I hope you do.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
So may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? You get to sleep here if you do.
Stay here.
Now you gotta sleep here anyway.
Thank you all so much.
Good night.
Tina.
We're adjourned. Good evening.
Next month.